So now we want to talk about how the body has to be able to produce energy, right? And so the aerobic respiration, so using oxygen, we produce ATP in the mitochondria. We need carbohydrates, fat, protein, B vitamins in order to produce that energy. And then the body has to be able to use it. So the energy has to go to the right place. The cell has to be able to take it in. And we know that the brain is very demanding. Even though it's a tiny bit of mass, it uses a huge part of the body's energy. And most of that is used by the neurons in the brain. So what are the things that make it hard for energy to get into a cell? So we have to make the energy, and then we have to, the energy is a fuel, right? Then we have to actually be able to use the fuel. So the fuels for the brain are primarily glucose, oxygen, fat, and protein. So we need, if we have insulin resistance, then what's going to happen is that the fuel, the glucose, is not going to get into the cell. It's just going to be circulating like on the outside of the cell. And so we don't have fuel, and we do have inflammation. And then we have high insulin, and then our insulin degradation enzyme is going to be working on that instead of on the amyloid beta plaques. And so that's a slippery slope. Oxygen, we need the oxygen. And the oxygen, there's no reserve of oxygen. You have to breathe it in all the time. So that means that you have to have proper vascularization in order to have appropriate perfusion of the oxygen into the cells. And then we know we have to have adequate fat for the nerve transmission. Protein is what the neurotransmitters are made out of. We need all of those things for fuel for the brain. Have lack of fuel. If we have blood sugar dysregulation, it could be high or low. If we have anemia, so we talked about the sickle cell anemia, misfolding of the hemoglobin before. We could also have anemia that's because we don't have enough B vitamins or enough iron, the cofactors for making the neurotransmitters. We can also have a lack of fuel. Well, like we talked before, you don't get oxygen, you got poor perfusion, low nitric oxide for dilating the blood vessels. Hypothyroidism can also do this. And then diet and exercise feed into this, because remember that the mitochondria live in the cells. And if we don't get exercise, the mitochondria are going to die because there's no point. Body's very efficient. So in our model that we're working with, most cognitive decline is related to the inability of fuel to get into the cell. The second most common reason is because there's not enough fuel. We don't have enough nutrition. It's not being carried properly, or the hormones. The last one is toxins. And basically what toxins do is they steal fuel, they steal energy, and use it for other reasons rather than for maintaining the brain. So in the hypertrophic model, the low thyroid function definitely can contribute to this. The thyroid hormones are really important for maintaining hippocampal volume. And remember, that's where the dentate gyrus is, where new neurons are formed. The thyroid hormones help with all the sort of like processes and stages of neuron development. So if we don't have enough thyroid hormone, we're going to have downregulation of the brain. And if we have too much thyroid hormone, it can do similar things where it creates a mad brain. It creates craziness in the brain. So we don't want too low. We don't want too high. We want just right. Goldilocks, Goldilocks. And then the last system is the barrier system. So we talked about the blood-brain barrier. You have the 1 gram of GABA that you're going to use to see how your blood-brain barrier is doing. We'll talk about that next time. And it's the phospholipids that are primarily what form the barrier system. And the phospholipids is basically fat. Choline also helps with that. This is what creates safety between the inside and the outside of the brain. Now, normal aging, you don't really see a change in these phospholipids. Normal aging, the brains of a 40-year-old and a 100-year-old are just about the same. You can maintain a strong barrier system. We're designed to. We need that. But with abnormal aging, cognitive decline, you're going to see a loss in that barrier system. And you're going to start getting infiltrate from the outside of the brain into the brain. And that's why they say with Alzheimer's, it's like a zoo in there. There's so many microorganisms because they have a leaky brain. And then, of course, we're going to have loss of the gray matter and white matter in Alzheimer's. And so this is the progression that is an abnormal aging and something that can be avoided in many cases. We need those phospholipids. We need cholesterol homeostasis, triglyceride, which is a storage form of carbohydrates, and then the membranes that